Alright, first thing you're going to do is place this piece flat on the ground with these tabs pointing up. You'll notice these little U-shaped brackets welded onto the side on 2/3 of this section. That's the upper 2/3, because this is where the guardrails will go. So that side is down, that side is up, because these two U brackets are in place. Okay, next thing you're going to do is put these platforms into these tabs. So not all of these are the same. 2 of them are the same and 1 of them is different. The 2 will have these holes right along this long side, these holes right here. That's how you know that those parts will go on the upper 2/3 of the bed, because this is where the guardrails are going to hook up. So since there's going to be guardrails here on the top and on the middle bunk, and since that's the top, the mesh will be pointing up. So this one we can put right in here, just like that, with the mesh side pointing up. And we know that side is up because of these U brackets again are welded in place. This is where the guardrails will go. So top bunk, middle bunk. And again, this one has holes right in this area where the guardrails will hook up later, you'll see. So one of those will go in the middle and another one will go on top. Just like that. So now that we have the top bunk and middle bunk in place, we'll take the bottom one, which is this one right here, and you'll notice it doesn't have any holes along this long beam part, because the bottom bunk will not have any guardrails. Again, remember that the steel mesh is pointing up, pointing that way. So once you have these 3 platforms in place, we can take the other headboard, the other side, and just place it on top. Okay, so the next step is to put the other headboard, the other piece, over the top of these platforms. Again, make sure that the guardrail side is pointing up, and that the U brackets on this headboard up here line up with the U brackets down there, because it's for the guardrails. So we have part A laying horizontally on the ground with the ladder, and part D is this piece up here. You might need to use a hammer or a mallet to shimmy these little tabs that were sticking out into place so that everything lines up. The tolerances are tight, so it might not fit, perfectly on the first try. You might have to kind of shimmy everything because everything is so tight. The next step is to find this hex bit. Should come with in the bag, the hardware bag, and a drill to insert these smaller bolts. You're going to use these smaller bolts to anchor everything in place. Again, don't tighten everything on the first time. You might want to you might just want to put everything in by hand first and wait to tighten with the drill at the very end. So we're going to go ahead and insert the bolts to anchor things in place by hand. Okay, so now that we put all the bolts in loosely by hand, we flipped the whole thing 90 degrees over, so that now these platforms are horizontal, so it's starting to look more like a bunk bed. So remember, the top and middle are the ones that are going to have these little holes on the sides, make sure you put those in order. And the one that doesn't have any holes goes on the very bottom because it doesn't have any guardrails. Okay, in the long, skinny box, you'll find these wood panels. They have two different colors, a dark brown walnut and a dark grayer tone. And you're gonna slide these panels into these U-brackets out here. And you can just pick whatever color you want pointing in or out. So these U-brackets, you just slide them in just like that. And you'll go ahead and do that with the top and middle, but you won't actually fasten or drill anything into place quite yet. Okay, so I went ahead and turned this half of the bed around so that the wood panels would be facing us. So now that these wood panels are in place, the next step is to take these long rods, and you'll notice they have these 4 holes on them. These 4 holes will point inward, not down, not up, but in. And you'll go ahead and just place it on top of the wood panel, just like that, and use the longer bolts, these longer bolts, to anchor them into place via these long vertical posts. So you just put those in by hand. Okay, we're now looking at the inside of the guardrail here. This is the inside. The next step is to take these flat brackets and you're going to anchor them to this top rod that we just put in, and the platform. That's what these 2 holes are down here. The platform and the top rod, and attach these brackets just like that with these short bolts. Then you'll go ahead and put these headboards on the side piece right in here, just like that, just using a drill bit and a Phillips drill bit, and just screw it on the outside from the inside using the small screws. You go ahead and just anchor that using the self-tapping screws. It might be a good idea before you anchor these boards in place to use a little hole drill bit to drill pilot holes in the center of these metal holes. Drill a little pilot hole so that it's easier for the screw to stay in place. It's kind of hard to hold in place unless unless you're really good at it. But for me, at least, it helped to drill a tiny little pilot hole and kind of holds that screw in place. So we're at about the halfway point. At this point, you're basically just going to repeat everything we just did with the other half, the other box. And remember to not tighten any of the bolts all the way, because we need to make sure that everything's in place, everything is nice and square with both halves, and then we can tighten everything together. So go ahead and repeat everything we did with the other half. Okay, so after you've set up the other half, you're going to connect the 2 halves together via these holes that are on the vertical posts. There should be 4 of them, 1, 2, and then on the other side 3, 4. One thing I noticed is that if you ever find a hole that's missing, it's probably just halfway perforated. It probably just didn't get punched out all the way. So what I did was I just took a hammer and like a screw or one of the bolts and just tap it, and the hole will punch out. So once you have the 2 halves together, then you can go around and tighten all of the, and once it's square and in the position that you want it, you can go around and tighten every single bolt that you've put in. I noticed that the ones on the very bottom are the hardest to tighten, so it might be a good idea to tighten those before you connect the 2 halves together, and then connect them together, and then go ahead and tighten everything up.